go ahead and start. Well, welcome to the Greene Art Gallery. I'm Catherine Greene, and we've been doing these Sunday painting demonstrations and talks, and really people have been enjoying them so very much, and we're thrilled to have Deborah here. We had a one-person show with her, the show before this show. It was fabulous. People would come into the gallery. Her work was filling the entire gallery and had quite an experience of who she is and the power of her paintings. The title of the show was Peaceful, Beautiful, and it was indeed that. So I'm thrilled. I've never seen Deborah paint before, so I'm thrilled to see her paint. She said she'd come back and do a pastel demonstration as well, which would be wonderful.
Welcome. What I loved about this show, too, was that Catherine was happy to hang, never questioned, never even thought about hanging pastels and oils together in one show. To my eye, there's a big connection visually with the color palette, with subject matter, and just the way I work. And the reason I mention that is what I call underpainting, which I'm not sure is even a word. Every time I type that when I write about my work, it comes up with spell check, and there's no way to spell that properly, but nonetheless I call it an underpainting, which all of these paintings have. Very clear in the pastels especially. This is actually oil paint here with pastel over it, and in the pastels, not as much this one, but in here you can really see a lot of the oil wash that I put on the paper first, and true of those pastels as well. And you'll see, the reason I mention this is that I am developing a little bit of a new take on that underpainting. Going with bold and bright colors in an underpainting, which is a very loose, washy step in the procedure. And my recent thought is to go with very bold, bright colors and then to tone those down with the finished paint. And in some cases, those bold colors come through, as this is, but this here is more of a local color. It's in keeping with the painting. What I'm now doing is making this, say, orange, or in the reds and purpley, reds and oranges. Not that I would leave that corner bright, but I might skim over it with purple and you'd see some of that warmth come through. So you're catching me when I'm experimenting a little bit. We'll see what happens. Even this has an underpainting. This little bit of warmth here is underpainting. That bright orange little spot. And one of the other benefits of underpainting is it covers the white. So that if I take a broad sweep with a big palette knife and it leaves these little holes, if you will, it's the white of the board is not showing through. So you have some tone there. And what that color is, of course, is important. So you know it when you put down the wrong underpainting color. But with palette knife, they tend to cover over more. Pastels, they show a little bit more.
Deborah, could you talk about shimmer here in the underpainting there? Because that's one of the ones I know.
There's a lot of underpainting showing here. And I'm not sure I would use oranges and reds in this one in particular. If you look in certain lights, you can see all the horizontal marks are pastel and all the dots are pastel. But the entire painting was covered with this grayish purple color, varying slightly into pinks and blues. Knowing that there were more steps to come, and anticipating and crossing my fingers and hoping that this tone was the right value and the right color for just this indication of water surface, and also allowing for that white pop. It's not pure white, but the values are what's so important in the painting, and I'm going to try to do that in front of you in a few minutes. Value is key. I took a 5-day workshop about a year ago, and the instructor didn't even talk about color. 5 days, didn't talk about color until day 4. It was all about value, and there's a great sort of saying, and I don't know who to credit it to, but I like it, and it is that color gets all the glory, but value does all the work. Value, by the way, is the light and dark, how light and dark something is. So anyway, I tried to hit a middle tone so that I could go darker and lighter. And that's what you just set out to do in that underpainting. Some of what's in the boats are a little bit more detailed in terms of underpainting. This was a different tone, but if you keep the purple going out throughout, it really unites the whole painting as well. Does that?
So many people have commented on the painting that I just wondered how it was achieved. And I talked about underpainting with it, but now I know.
Yeah. It's quite a similar tone, except up here you can see it's a little pinker, a little darker, in anticipation of this row. The boat's a little more detailed, some rusty reds. Any questions, please just yell out.
How do you choose your color for the underpainting?
That is a good question, though, and you'll be, I've sort of hidden the underpainting. I did the underpainting for this demo first, because I needed it to dry. I did it yesterday, and you'll all go, what is she thinking? And it's pretty wild. It's pretty bright and colorful. So, like I said, these are a lot of local color used in this. The value really being more important than the color. I may be proved wrong by the time I get done with this, but a warm tone under a sky is often just yummy. You know, there is that warmth from the sun. There's something, as you all know as painters, there's the soul of a painting, and then there's the technical aspect to the painting. And I think that adding that warmth to the landscape gives it more feeling, which you might call soul, and more of an emotional reaction to a place, rather than just a sky being a color, and you put in that color. If you layer it, you get a depth and a richness that begins to talk it out. I don't know if I answered your question, but you'll see. I will soon bring out my crazy wild underpainting. These are just a bit about my process in general. I grabbed these from my studio. These were done outside, plein air, and I love to do these when it's not raining or too hot or no mosquitoes and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like I'm painting my own photograph to work from, my own resource material. And this can be made up into a larger painting. I remember clearly what I was going for, and I'm not even sure I achieved it in this underpainting, or in this sketch. Thunderstorms were rolling through, and it did indeed. The sky opened up about 15 minutes after we packed up. But the clouds broke here and there and allowed for just rays of sun to hit bits of that marsh. So when I go back to build this into a bigger piece, that's what I'll be going for. And I know that from that experience of being outdoors. In a photograph of this, which I have, I took it for detail, but does not give you that, you know, quite, I mean, to go through the whole experience of painting it really gets it into my brain, to remember those details and what I was after. Here's another one outdoors. It was kind of cold, so it's real quick. You can see it's late in the season. The leaves are down.
Is that all in oils also?
It's all oil, yes. And no underpainting on these because I'm outdoors, unless I do a really quick, like liquid sketch or something that dries pretty quickly. And just, you know, almost references for trees. And what I call bird holes, which I'll do in my demo today, or sky holes, usually they're called. So just sketches outdoors. Okay, so I'm working from my iPad. I'm relatively new to this, but it's been fabulous. This is my subject. Sorry, in case of the drops today. I'm going to just put it here and hope. Yeah. So I did a couple of quick sketches. And I'll pass these around, but they're very smudgy, so if you're worried about your white sweater or whatever, be careful. This is where when I consider also, and these took 10 minutes, I mean, not long, but I'm considering how to break up the board, how to break up the format. Okay, here's the big reveal of my crazy colors. This was my size for a demo today. Yeah. This is a little unusual for me, so bear with me, but we'll go through this journey together. And so, you know, here I am, I have this format, and I'm just sketching to see basically where I want to put the shapes. I'm boiling this down to simply shapes and forget the detail. Detail comes way down the road. Detail I think of as frosting on the cake, and if you get to that too soon, you've got to jam the cake underneath. And you don't, I mean, it just is a mess, right? So you think big, big, big shapes. Get rid of all these little green dots and think of that entirely as a dark shape and a dark shape. And so how does this work? And if we turn this upside down, and you begin to forget that it's a landscape, you begin to be able to see those dark shapes. And you do these to however far you need to take this so that you can really begin to see this as a design first. That truly, that's not even the cake. It's like the pan the cake is baked in, right? We need that structure to continue that silly metaphor, to basically get your design going. I sorted out most of the paint. This is actually one of the reasons why I think I love to paint with a palette knife, because I get to do this. It's just, I mean, I've had people sit in the audience who are very particular, very detailed painters have almost a heart attack when they see how much paint did it put on a palette. They're like gas. So yeah, here's a, there's like nothing, no comparison, but the more you do it, sort of the bolder you get a little bit too. You just sort of say, you know that those reds and oranges, that most of that will disappear. Okay, so here's one of my debates. I just said I tend to work from the top down. Right off the bat, I'm already wondering, I'm not sure if I want to leave this a slightly yellow tone as opposed to going a different color. I'm gonna put in a few color notes here first. There's a method of painting called puzzle painting. I don't know how many people have, actually maybe some of you actually work that way, which is a complete mystery to me. What that means is that I would say start anywhere and I would finish a whole area, bring it up to finish as in a puzzle piece. And then I would move next to it as in another puzzle piece and then build the painting out like that. But to establish the correct colors and the correct values right off the bat is magic to me, people who work that way. So that's not my process. What I'm going to do here with my little, nearby photo is indicate, it's got a purple tone to it, which the complement of the yellow. And that yellow is kind of a icky greenish yellow, so we'll see how much of that I keep. But what I want to do is just give myself a few little directions, just notes to see if I'm in the right ballpark. Because once I have, let's say I've laid in this whole sky, if I get down to here and say, oh my god, that sky is too dark, I gotta scrape it all off. I don't want to waste the paint. I don't want to scrape it off. I'll give myself a little path here. So I'm mixing ultramarine blue, and phthalo works too, but phthalo is so strong, as many of you probably know. For this kind of dreary day, I'm going to go more ultramarine blue. This background color is, the background trees, they're trees without the leaves on them, is really quite beautiful. And now the value, I'm not all that much worried about the color totally, I'm indicating it a little bit, but I want the value relationships first. Mixing viridian green, some more ultramarine. And I'm going to pick up some of that color that I just mixed for this tree area, which also keeps things in sync. Kind of keeps it all looking like it belongs on the same painting. And this red area here is actually a stand of evergreen. But I also don't want to split 50-50. This is a tree shape here. So I'm going to make sure that goes over and breaks that particular line. So I can already see between these three tones that I need that bluer and darker, but what's there is okay. So I don't have to do any scraping. This is very thin at this point. I just love this color and I want to be able to hit it right. One of the challenges with palette knife is if you get a little piece of grit, it just sort of stays with you. Beginning to build that tree line. It looks pretty sloppy. I mean, this is not pretty. I've shown you it's really not pretty. And the beginning stages are really not all that attractive, but hang in there. I have this fear when I do demos that I'm working here and I'm turn around and you're all gone. One of my nightmares because it doesn't look so hot. But hang in there with me for a little while.
Or you could pretend there's nobody here.
Yeah, that's a lot harder. I'm way too anxiety ridden for that. And I am using, not just because it's here, I'm using some of the paint mixtures that I've already, like some of that sky tone is going to go into at least the first stages of this band of distant field. And again, it just keeps, it doesn't muddy, as long as you're not mixing more than maybe 3 colors. That's not a hard and fast rule, but I'm not going to get muddy yet by just incorporating a little bit of that color. It's a purple toned sky, it's a yellow distant field, golden, which are complementary colors. So the purple is going to kill that yellow a little bit by adding, right, it's going to gray it down a little. So that's my goal. And as I showed you in one of those plein air sketches, one of the things I really love are the little sky holes. Of course, you have to keep them in line with what you have going, but I just want to, there'll be some openings, there'll be, that field is going to go behind that tree. All right. And there's another stretch, another little piece of this golden field. And this, again, is just a guide. I'm going to make this slightly wider. As artists, we have lots of tools to indicate distance. In this case, I'm doing 2 things. Both of these fields are pretty far away. However, this one, I may not even be able to see it, but this one's slightly more yellow. It's going to bring it more forward, and it's bigger. I'm just going to make it wider, even though it's not that way in the photo. So don't get too tied to your photos. They're truly just guidelines for you. And this will make its way into that tree as well.
As you build the color, how do you prevent it from turning into a gray blob?
Well, part of it is that 2 or 3 colors. If you go beyond 2 or 3 colors, you're getting.
So limit yourself?
Yeah, try to limit yourself. I mean, I have. So here's that next stage of field as you come forward, and I don't know if this is the end, be all and end all yet. This is early. I'll try not to keep you here so long that we miss the Downton Abbey rerun. I hope I won't take that long.
I like your priorities though.
Yeah, it's this and the Downton Abbey.
Is there a window of time that you have in which you're blocking out that and then having to paint over it? Or do you worry about that in terms of drawing?
In terms of drawing, if I don't have a long period of time to paint, this is all I would do to indicate that. And if I have to leave, I'll scrape this off, and I'll work just to where because if I leave this and it dries, I'm in trouble.
Right.
It's very, very textural, even with just a thin layer of paint in order to come back on top of that. So it is a problem if you have to leave for more than half a day, or overnight is even a problem. Certain colors dry quite quickly.
Do you have a medium in it?
No, good question. No medium at all. And the reason being is that I can't keep that mixture consistent. And I think that I should, if I want to mix a medium in there. I don't want some areas with a lot of medium and some areas with virtually none for the longevity of the paint and cracking. That's why I work on a board also, is cracking. On a canvas, there's some give and take and movement in the canvas, and in this paint that becomes quite thick can crack quite easily. So I just right out of the tube. There's enough variety of what comes out of the tube. Some, you squirt some colors and oil just gushes out.
Yeah.
So there's enough variety there. Okay. So to further answer your question, I think because I know that I'm going to try anyway to cover this canvas today, I can put these marks pretty much anywhere I want. Okay, this might be a little green. It's quite different than the photo, but actually, that's all right. So in truth, in my studio, I would have probably done more of the sky by now. A demo is a little bit different in that regard.
Now, what did you put in that green? The one
That green is, I have Viridian. I don't use anything brighter. I just use Viridian. I mix it with yellow or yellow to get a bright sunny green. This is mixed with some blue and brown. I'm just going to try to push this. I think I need to move because otherwise I won't keep you here through dinner. So I'll speed up the process now that I got a little bit of paint moving. Okay, you'll notice that I'm staying away from this area right here, which is actually my focal point. And one of the things I do try to do, although I'm not doing it here very well, is to attack the focal point pretty early on, because if you can't get that right, why bother, right? You wasted a lot of time. But this is the area of interest where the tree meets these fields, and it is tricky. My back will be to you a little bit during this. I will put in a little bit of that detail. And please just come on up if you want to and take a little look if I'm really in the way. I'm putting in some trunks. I'll use a smaller brush, smaller palette knife. Just don't all be gone when I turn around. Get some good dark in there. So as this goes over an area such as in here, and I'm a little bit to the left of center, which I think is fine. I'm gonna use this. I'll do it this way. I put paint on the side of the palette knife that I'm using. Lay it on there. Looks all right. Great. If it's a little heavy, I'm gonna scrape it. I need to soften that, and you'll see as I work along that it's not. These are very small areas of outer edges of this tree. This is sort of a test color in here, more of a value. This might be a good spot to keep this slightly brighter towards this area of interest, and as I get out here, dull it out a little bit. Does that make sense to everybody? Where it's away from the area of interest. So all of these actually I could, in a very subtle way, beef up the color just a little bit as it gets near this area. You as the painter get to tell people where to look in a painting, much more than you can imagine. I could make this the focal point down here in this quadrant. Or I could make these trees back here the focal point if I wanted to. I'm trying to get this line straight. I think in a landscape, not always, but often, and I think you'll find it true in probably every one of these, I think there needs to be a horizon that's straight in a painting somewhere, and I'm sure there are exceptions, but actually if I look at every one, there's a straight line. It makes me feel as a painter that I'm standing on planet Earth, and I'm not tipping over, kind of. I see a lot of marsh paintings with those S curves of the marsh, and I think they're often, they're much flatter than some paintings indicate. And so anyway, I'm attempting to make some parallel lines to give.
Did you sketch those lines on the board before you started the initial painting that we saw?
I did not in this case, no, I did, with a brush I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I went right in with the paint. And that paint, this paint is so movable. With a paper towel, this is gone. So it's very movable, and I don't really feel the need to use a charcoal or anything first. Yeah, it's very, very liquidy. What I was painting this upright, as you can see, this area looked a little different than this, but when this started to drip, I dried it flat so that it would stop dripping, because I kind of liked all this, even though I know most of this is going to disappear. But it's kind of cool. It's just the, see, so this is now, I've touched the darker paint, so now that I'm at this point, I go through quite a few paper towels. This is hardly a green process. But I want that dark paint off that palette knife. And every single time it needs to go, it needs to be wiped off because I don't want that dark green. Make one little mark and wipe the blade. Now I could make this band with horizontal stroke all the way across. I guess it's a combination. I love to make a horizontal band, especially in a farm area or natural nature. It's not a perfect straight line, so little vertical strokes will make a nice horizontal stretch. Now, this is interesting too. Just these things just sort of hit me. This green section is the same thickness as this, this gold strip, and I don't want that either. So I'll have to fiddle with this, literally the drawing here, which is easy to do. What I think I will do is thin out this, just mark. And I don't hate that, so I'm going to leave that for now. Not hating something is a good first step. Yeah, a little bit of warmer tone in here, which again is right near the focal point. And I'm going to begin to... Actually, I just also noticed a little lighter edge along here. I may put that in at some point. So when these edges do need to come together, it's just a matter of touching them, going back, continually adjusting them, and until you don't hate it. Back and forth. I tend to go up and down, up and down. So these little bird holes, sky holes, that's a little yellow. They tend to be a shade darker than what's out here because of, I think it's simultaneous contrast is the technical term. But it's simply that these marks that I'm putting in now, they're surrounded by dark, so they're going to look lighter. So if I use this color and pop it in there, it'll look too light because it's surrounded by dark. There's something about this edge too that really needs to be brought up. using the point just to break those up a little bit, soften those.
As you go from front to back, do you change the thickness of the paint strokes?
As I go from front to back.
As you get in the distance, will
forward?
it have
Yeah,
less strokiness, thickness?
I think that it's a good point, even with pastel, it's the same thing. The distance strokes can be smaller. And yet another tool that we have to indicate foreground. So some of these strokes down here can be quite bold and blocky, indicating something that's closer to you. Depends on the scene. A couple things I want to do. Okay, I have a bit of mud. Someone asked about mud, so I'm getting rid of it. What they are the browns that are in the tree, and what I'd like to do is just establish that background color. This is still not right. And I could. You lose it and you find it, and you lose it and you find it, and you lose it, and you hopefully end where you found it.
Do you typically do the whole blocking, or I'm calling it blocking, what you're doing right now, the color
Yep.
filling in, and then let it dry and then paint over it, or do you
No.
immediately follow it on with the real rich detail?
With palette knife, I follow it on right away, because again, if it dries with that texture,
Yeah.
it's really hard. Once you hit it with another palette knife, you're hitting all the bumps,
Yeah.
and suddenly you have, dramatic texture. Which is another whole technique, by the way. It's just not what I do. I like to just go at it and then remind myself too that I'm working with paint. I want it to look like paint. I don't want this to look like a photograph. If I did, I'd frame the photograph. Again, that's just me. I don't have anything against, very realistic work. Beautiful, amazing.
Is your palette glass or is it plexiglass?
Palette is glass. Right now it's value, color,
Do you ever change it?
like two
Take
mountains.
Yeah, artist license, and you just. say,
Oh, sure. I would do that in a heartbeat. If it worked, if it's suddenly especially if you walk away from a painting for a few hours and you come back and suddenly something hits you, it looks entirely different. And that's what happens. You can also put it in a mirror, reflect it in a mirror and look at it to see get sort of a new take on it.
How long does it typically take you to paint something?
Couple of days, whoever asked the question. Even the big ones, because like that sky can go in, pretty quickly, and none of us are a fan of overworking something. So there's a freshness to just let in. You'll see when I lay this in. I'm just sort of trying to get this to look halfway decent up here. But yeah, a couple of days on a palette knife painting. Okay, so it's interesting. I think what I will do is I will have at this section.
You're getting near your 2 hours now, your hour now.
Okay, if anybody would like to get up, move around, come on up, talk to me. I'm just going to mix a different color. Not a bad time to take a break if you need to stand. Color a little bit more of that. I've also cut pieces of mat board to do this with. When you want to build custom size and shape. Or you're painting a horizon, let's say. It's kind of nice it takes a few tries, but really move the paint around the way you want it to, but it makes a beautiful mark.
So what you're doing is smoothing out the marks, basically?
I'm smoothing them out, but I'm also adding a really nice horizontal touch. I don't know if that's completely parallel because I'm at such an angle here, but I can even pick up paint from here. And, you know, give that an edge. Again, these ended up kind of the same size. So as I finish, I would adjust that. And especially for grassy areas, I mean, even that gives a sense of that being much more natural than a solid color. Let's say if I pulled this down into this area a little bit, broke that up. Especially in the distance where you don't need a lot of detail. I mean, you know, again, I'm not hating that. This I need to fix or work on, but this edge needs some work. It wouldn't be with this tool. I would begin to break this edge up this way. It's closer, I'm going to see a little more detail, a little more variation. The tree is, you know, clearly going to take the most time, but the edge of these branches, you know, begin to fan a little back and forth thing. Very soft. This shape that I'm creating, I have to keep my eye on. I'm not sure. This edge, again, I don't hate. I like how it's soft in some areas. And I don't want it to look like that bowling ball. So some variety is good. This I'm beginning to really like. And that's just, again, a matter of up and down, back and forth. Being careful, wipe that off. And this is where I'll go back to my resource just to see what is happening with that skyline there. You know, is it something that I want to incorporate? I liked this area where it became thinner. I can borrow some paint. I also decided that I wanted that a purpley blue sky, too much yellow in the overall piece. So I went with the purpley sky. And so, you know, you make a mark, and it's such an imperfect tool. It's not a brush with 3 hairs in it that you can really totally control. It is, you know, that losing it and finding it again. I'm not kidding. You know, you have to like work that edge for quite a while. You know, it looks like they were just slapped on there, but it takes a while to work that edge and make some of it solid, make some of it atmospheric, broken up beautifully. I love this, the color combo here. Something that I would continue to work on. There are places, a lot, but there are places that this would also be broken up a bit with sky holes in here. So again, losing it and finding it. Back and forth with these trees. Worked on this for a while. Now I got to put the tree back up in here, in some areas. Okay, so then let's say that's a more solid edge, and then it becomes sort of softer in here. So this is just picky work. Yes, you have to keep going here. This is too isolated a spot. I'll tone that down and maybe break it up. Everything in the rest of the painting should support this, meaning slightly brighter color around it. This is a higher area, a higher contrast area. These all point to this area. And nothing, to say it the other way around, nothing should take away from this. So, you know, maybe towards the edges here, I'll continue to blur that out a little bit, make that a little bit less pronounced at the edge here, without being too obvious about it, of course. But again, a back and forth process. So that's one thing that jumped out at me. I'm still struggling with this color a little bit. If I were to take this home and finish it up, I think that it's too isolated. It's like the only place in the painting where there's purple that jumps out. There's a little bit in the tree, but it's a little too isolated as purple. So that jumps out at me. I like, you know, I like this area, but that's because there's purple in everything that's here. So then the question is, all right, do I bring, this has a beautiful purple tone to it. And again, my little talk about it not being about the color, it's about the value, would mean then that it doesn't really matter the color if I introduce some of that down here, right?
Brilliant.
So there's one way to pull that down. Now, can I add it into this area a little bit? I like that a lot. That, you know, that kind of breaking up of this area could occur too. In fact, that might actually be the answer. There's a little hint of something. I don't even care what it is in the photograph. There's just a breakup of that space. These shapes are better and more varied.
Yeah.
It really is a matter of pushing and pulling that. I'm not sure that area is entirely resolved, but I like the softness. So
I like it.
in these harder areas, again, it's a soft. So, you know, it's getting there. It really is it's a process. And I don't want these to look like flowers. But there is in the photos giving me hints too, which is helpful. Again, I don't want to be locked into it, but it's the time of the year where that grass is past. So, actually I did a little bit right here. Let me continue on this color. It's there, I don't know if you can see that, but if you squint at that, this whole area does just sort of fall to a light middle tone. The sky is the lightest. But I could go darker and more bold in this area, which I'll do if you want to hang. So I don't,
Is that a hill?
no, it's actually flat. It's a field.
Flat.
Yeah. The background goes, this rises a little bit, you know, like a low point here, and then that background rises, but it's pretty flat. Way or other.
Did you say where this picture is, or where this location is?
This is where I used to live in Massachusetts. I would drive by this farm every day, and they have, you know, great produce off the little side stand. It's a beautiful farm. Where I lived is South Dartmouth, Mass, and there are so many farms in that area. That's great. Lots and lots of organic food. And
What time of the year was it?
very late summer, early. Well, the leaves are gone, so I would say more early winter.